is said that the most powerful forces in society are revealed by our tallest buildings. Once our skylines were dominated by great palaces, parliaments, cathedrals, church spires. Now it is skyscrapers, office blocks. Commerce is the ruling power, dwarfing the stone and spires of the old gods. But there are always exceptions. When I'm 8 years old, my family trade the damp fens of Lincolnshire for a Yorkshire town, Doncaster, Donny, or Daneham, as she was formerly known. Once a great Roman settlement, gateway between north and south. From my new bedroom window, the 8-year-old me can see houses and trees, but the skyline is dominated by 2 towers, a pair of ghostly concrete jellyfish, the tallest buildings for miles. What mysterious beings inhabit these strange, windowless monoliths? I cycle out to them. I stare up in wonder. Unbeknown to me, the most powerful force in my landscape is water. So there I am, this little 8-year-old, and one afternoon deep in the woodland behind my new home, binoculars in hand, I spy a little owl perched on the low branch of a tree. Birds are my latest obsession. I scour the ground on the lookout for oddfellows. There are none. Instead, I find an old teacup nestled in the undergrowth, its handle long broken. And I'm overwhelmed with this compulsion to take it to the towers. I cycle there, cradling it in my arms, and place it at the foot of the taller of the 2 buildings. An offering to whatever mysterious beings lived there. It was, I think, my first act of worship. All my life I've dreamed of water. It's the same relentless nightmare that leaves me shaking and scared. I'm in too deep, feet unable to find the bottom. It's called thalassophobia, the primal fear of dark water, of a creature that lurks in the murky depths, with the power to drag me down into madness and death. And if I had the courage to face it, perhaps, the power to save. I feel its presence in murky rivers, coastal waters, and deep mountain lakes. I am the spirit of dark and lonely waters. This was a public information film made in the 1970s for children. It was terrifying. And I'll tell you something else, it worked for me, but perhaps too well. But they did get one important detail wrong. The spirit of dark and lonely water is female. The same year that my family migrated to Doncaster heralds the great summer of 1976. England is in the grip of a drought. Not a tabloid-style sizzling summer, but a national heatwave. Forest fires break out daily. Temperatures hit 36 degrees. Water becomes scarce. The land is scorched and bleached. With the heatwave comes soaring numbers of aphids. and hot on their trail, a plague of ladybirds. Great clouds of them shimmer through the air. They stick to your hair and your clothes. Open your mouth for too long, at your peril. And when the aphids have gone, the ladybirds starve to death. Millions of their bodies litter the streets and countryside. This was a biblical prophecy, English style. Something else happened that summer of 1976 that would stay with me forever. In the midst of the great drought, we took a family trip to the dark waters of Ladybower Reservoir in Derbyshire to see the drowned church. Building of the reservoir began in 1939. Deep in the valley, the villages of Derwent and Ashipton were demolished. Residents ordered to leave their homes forever in the name of progress. But while the village was destroyed, the church was left standing. A mark of respect or superstition, perhaps. And during times of severe drought, when the water levels of Ladybower fell sufficiently low, the church spire of the drowned church would slowly re-emerge through the waters. A stone creature rising from the depths, a drowning god gasping for air. I was 8 years old. I remain haunted by this strange spectacle. It was the River Don that brought the Romans here in 43 AD to build a settlement at the lowest crossing of the river, a fort to divide north and south. But the Don's legacy is older than the Romans. Once the river would have been venerated as a goddess. To our pre-Roman ancestors, wells and springs were entrances to other worlds. Rivers, lakes, lochs, each had their guardians, deities, goddesses, nymphs. The Romans named their new town Danum, after Danu, Celtic goddess of rivers, Hindu goddess of primordial waters, the divine creator who birthed all things into being. A hydromancer. And for those with the courage to sleep by her side, in the dream palace of the well or spring, she may divine the future in her swirling eddies. Danu, who gave her name to the Danube, the Duna, the Dun, the Don. Danu became Danum, became Doncaster, a town built on a river that has since forgotten its river. An inconvenience, it was shunted to the far side of the town, neglected and unloved. A river that remains polluted by our privatised water companies. A river that is capable of still seeking revenge. A river I grew up never knowing. What happened to the Don, to Danu, our river goddess? What did we do to her? Was there some mysterious connection between water and the pagan idea of feminine energy? Seeking answers, I paid a visit to England's greatest living wizard, Alan Moore.
Water is generally seen as a female element in the tarot deck. Its corresponding suit is cups, which symbolises compassion. The male and the female energies, they are both necessary for the creation of anything, whether that be an idea or whether that be a universe. If one of them is dominating, then that's not really how it should work. That will lead to problems.
One thing struck me after visiting the wizard. If male and female need to be in balance, well, didn't I need to see a witch? As you know, the North boasts more than its fair share of wise women. I went to see Anwyd, a witch I knew living in the peaks. She ran a shop Airy Fairy in Sheffield city centre and was unpacking a large box of scented candles when I arrived. I began asking about Danu, but I found myself opening up about my fear of water, my nightmares, and this desire to reconnect with the River Don. She thought about it for a while, and then she said, well, from a Jungian perspective, water's the classic symbol of the unconscious. If you're having water nightmares, shit, you've got a lot of unresolved... She closed her eyes. Ah! It's about Vulcan. Vulcan? Tutting, she marches me to the window. Vulcan there, do you see him? At the top of the tallest building? In the distance, I could see the figure of a man at the top of Sheffield Town Hall. Roman god of fire and forge, she explained. Those are thunderbolts and a hammer in his hands. Sheffield's steel industry adopted him as their mascot. From a pagan's point of view, he has a lot to answer for. I was beginning to understand. A great battle of the sexes had once taken place here. God of fire versus goddess of water. Vulcan had won. The Don had been poisoned, left for dead. You really want to understand Danu, be free of those nightmares? Anwin asks me. Yes. Then you must take a journey back in time, David, to the source of the Don. Pay your respects to Danu. Make amends for Vulcan. Will you do that? Yes. Hang on. Did you say take a journey back in time to the source of the Don? Yes, David. It must be a magical journey. To travel back in time, you'll need to make an offering. I looked confused. Oh, you'll know it when you see it, she said, and went back to wrestling with the giant box of candles. Sandwiches packed. I'll leave my parents' house early in the morning, the water towers just visible through the haze. Past the Daneham retail outlets, down Scott Lane, Goose Hill, Baxter Gate, down Bolby Road, where William Sr.'s great sandhouse once stood, a subterranean castle of carved tunnels, ghostly figurines, beautifully sculpted creatures, a delight for all visitors, until 1931, when the council could see no further use for it and filled it with concrete. Past Frenchgate, once the Arndale Centre, where in 1967 Eckhart Seltzer's statue, The Lovers, was erected. A golden, naked couple joined at the hips in the throes of ecstasy and clearly fucking. The statue took pride of place in the centre of Doncaster's busy new shopping centre. Until 1988, when the council became increasingly worried that someone might take offence and have it removed. I carried on. Over the North Bridge, there she lay, the Don. Climbing down the banks under the bridge, I slip and nearly tumble into her dark waters. Picking myself up, my keen bird's eye is drawn to a post 50 yards to my left. A little owl stands upright on the post, feathers ruffled in a slight breeze. Instinctively, I look down, astonished. There at my feet, that old teacup, its handle long broken. I pick it up, clean it, and cast it into the Don's waters as an offering. And I am back in the summer of 1976. Hit by the blistering heat, I begin to slowly walk her waters from Doncaster, past the prison to Sprotborough, Denby Main, Coningsbrook. House martins chatter, clouds of ladybirds swirl around my head. I fan my face to keep them away. They cling to my clothes and my hair. Danu? The heat subsides and I'm walking back through the 1960s, 50s, 40s, 30s. Canalised, manipulated, poisoned by industry, the Don oozes through a broken landscape. A forgotten river, a stinking cesspool, it is heartbreaking to witness. I cover my nose with a hanky, trudge on and time rolls back. Choked by the coal industry at Mexborough, polluted from the heavy steelworks of Rotherham and Sheffield, the river is biologically dead. Her waters are artificially warmed and tainted, and she's diverted to flow through the steelworks to soothe this hellish heat. And I'm on the outskirts of Sheffield. In the distance, I see the Templedra Steelworks, half a kilometre in length, once the largest electric melting shop in the world. And controlling it all from the highest point in the city, the town hall, I see him. Vulcan, hammer in one hand, thunderbolts in the other. Vulcan the patriarch, holding forth over his empire, Danu his captor. The river goddess is imprisoned behind high walls, inaccessible, poisoned, and close to death. James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake opens with the word River Run. The book never ends, but is circular like a river, starting and ending with the same sentence. In the book, Joyce imagines the city and its buildings as masculine, Dublin's River Liffey as feminine. The first sentence, River Run past Even Adams, from swerve of shore to bend of bay, brings us by a commodious vicus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. The river brings us to the city. On the last page, it returns to the sea and returns to the opening lines. Away, alone, a lost, a last, a loved, along the river run past Even Adams, from swerve of shore to bend of bay. The book is a recirculation. It is endlessly repeated, but it is never the same. You may never step into the same Finnegan's Wake twice, for while the words never change, you do. When James Joyce wrote Finnegan's Wake, he no longer believed he was simply writing a book, but performing a work of magic, though it could be argued that all art is a work of magic. But as the river reaches the sea, does it really end there? The river is both linear and cyclical. With the river, we are bearing witness to past, present, and future simultaneously. But we must keep going on. I walk on. The Industrial Revolution is yet to be. The air is clean, the sky is swollen with clouds of starlings. The Don is thriving, pregnant with fish. It is so abundant with salmon that they're considered the poor man's food. Ahead I witness a tragedy in the making. Carpenter Robert Leckie and his family try to cross a ford, but their wagon is swept away, drowning the horse and pulling them under. I watch horrified. Those nearby cry out to the Lady of Doncaster to save them. Prayers are answered. Leckie and his family make it safely to the riverbank, and 500 years later a shrine to Our Lady of Doncaster will stand in the Church of St. Peter in Chains on Checker Road with the power to save. Darnley? It is now 1492, and near the confluence of the Don and the Rother I spy the chapel on the bridge. In less than 60 years, the Reformation will lead to its closure, and over the centuries it'll be the unlikely location for Rotherham's jail, a tobacconist, and for a while, local resident John Watson. The scorch marks from his fire can still be seen on the east wall. But really, this chantry was built as a spiritual safeguard for travellers like myself journeying in and out of town on the only road over the river. It's dusk as I approach. The figure of a monk with a lighted candle sits in an alcove. An invitation to pay my respect with a toll, an offering. Our Celtic ancestors would once have thrown coins in the river to appease the river goddess, a ritual that continues to this day every time we drop a coin down a well for good luck. Darling? A few miles on, I walk through the dirt roads of a small market town called Sheffield, up one of its hills, and I'm back into 950 AD. The church is having difficulty suppressing its subjects' desire to worship water, so King Edgar passes a law to extinguish paganism. No man may attribute reverence or sanctity to a well, river or spring without the bishop's authority. This is meant to be a Christian island now, after all. As I leave Sheffield for the heathland, the air turns chilly. I turn up my coat collars, stuff hands in pockets, begin my ascent. I climb with the dawn on the outskirts of the Pennines, dippers bob downstream, brambling and goldfinch chatter overhead. And I'm in the first millennium. Christianity is being sold to an island of heathens, but myths and rituals are traded. Churches are built on the sites of holy wells and springs, rededicated in honour of a Christian saint. We worship Jesus the fisherman. We baptise the newborn by sprinkling them with spring water, immersing converts in a sacred river. This isn't learned from some holy book, but a ritual taught to us long ago by Norsemen and Norse women. We tell stories of how the Holy Ghost emerges from the depths of a sacred well to impregnate Mary. Not the Virgin Mary, but Mary the great fish, Our Lady, Star of the Sea, Stella Maris, the sovereign mistress of the devils. Mary, from Sumerian Mar, the ocean. Mary, from whose name we get maritime, marriage, Mar, mother, and also nightmare, where she transforms into succubus, a fearful creature from the depths, the spirit of dark and lonely water. Approach with caution. She has the power to save and show you the future, or pull you under to madness and death. And I'm in the wilds of the Pennines now, the rule of Constantine, 300 AD, and there is snow underfoot. Bodies of water are entrances to other worlds. The Romans cast their shields, helmets, coins into the water as votive offerings. They worship the thermal waters at Buxton, and at Bath, their goddess Minerva unites with the Celtic goddess Sulis, and a cult is formed. Coins for healing, sheets of lead with curses inscribed, are thrown into the warm waters of the spring. But the empire is yet to be now, as I reach the final leg of my journey and enter a cold Neolithic realm. The Don is just a stream. I've arrived in a pagan place, a moorland of heather, bracken and moss, where the spring, the well, is a gateway, each with its nymph or deity. We tie rags, we drive nails into trees as an act of ceremonial union with the goddess. And it isn't churches erected by her side now, but standing stones, male and female united, the monolith and the well, the sword and the chalice, masculine and feminine, the line and the circle, the one and the zero, the binary code that drives a new mythic realm of virtual reality. Here I see past, present and future connected by time's arrow, and I have reached the source of the dawn. Before me is a dream palace, an oracle. I approach Dani for guidance, offer her coins from my pocket, drink her water. It's been a long journey. I've walked 40 miles and travelled over 2,000 years. I'm tired. I fall into a deep sleep. and in my dreams she comes. I'm back again in that familiar nightmare, alone in an endless body of water. Below, ominous shapes, the lingering shadow of madness and death, the spirit of dark and lonely waters, waiting to pounce, waiting to drag me under. I am the drowned village. I am the church spire. I am the Christian God, gasping for air. I am the villagers, engulfed by water, drowned by progress.